What are some everyday things that can end people because most don't know about it? Story one, carbon monoxide is something everyone knows about, but everyone also seems to forget about. I actually had a scare with this a few years ago. Thankfully, it turned out it wasn't carbon monoxide, but I was like 8 months pregnant with my first child, and it was August, and we had had some bad thunderstorms and had lost power a few times. Well, at like 2 a.m., the carbon monoxide detector goes off and it's loud. It's in our bedroom and the door's closed. I had to cover my ears. It was so bad. The whole time it's going off, though, my husband was sound asleep. Didn't even flinch. I was shaking him, trying to get him up for a good minute. Thankfully, he did wake up. We went outside and called the fire department. They came and determined it wasn't carbon monoxide, but most likely the detectors were wonky because of the multiple power losses over the previous week. It was a terrifying experience, though. Story 2, poor dental hygiene. Gum infections hit the brain fairly quickly and can be fatal before you even knew something was happening. Brush your teeth and talk to a dentist. Most will try to work with you on the money side if you don't have insurance. If not, try contacting a dental school near you. They are often looking for test subjects. I mean, patients to work on for training. Although it can be expensive, it's crucial to take care of dental hygiene. Teeth don't regrow, nor do they heal by themselves. If you have any sort of pain or discomfort, might as well have it checked immediately rather than risking it getting worse. Also, the pain can be absolutely unbearable if something is wrong if left unchecked. Better do something now than suffer later. Story 3, I know of a few things, all fire related. Pinched electrical wires, having, for example, a table leg or something on top of a wire, creates a hotspot that can eventually start a fire. Toasters under cabinets. If you have a toaster on your countertop and have cabinets mounted above that counter, leaving the toaster directly under the cabinets while in use is also a fire hazard. Be sure to pull it out from beneath the cabinets before use. Not sure if this one is still unknown by most people, but I'll add it just in case. Water does not put out a grease fire. It makes it worse because the grease or oil is less dense and floats on top of the water and continues to burn. So pouring water on a grease fire is likely to just spread the grease and fire around. Baking soda, a lid or cover of some kind, or, of course, a fire extinguisher will all smother the fire without spreading it around. Story 4, stress. Stress is a state when your body feels threatened and produces hormones to defend yourself, which will typically boost your muscle and reduce to minimum other functions like digestion, your kidneys, and overall all organs that aren't involved in fighting off a bear. If you're always stressed, chronic stress, you will damage your organs, all of them, at once. Chronic stress is a poison. You must avoid it. Note that normal episodic stress, like you're taking an exam today, or you have 13 missed calls from mom, aren't going to kill you. Well, not the stress at least. Story 5, people are not nearly careful enough when driving vehicles. You are operating a 2,000 pounds bullet. Please stop texting and pay attention. We all complain about it, but no one stops doing it. I only ever check my phone at red lights or if I'm cruising on the highway and want to skip a song on Spotify. I feel even this is excessive. Next time you're a front seat passenger instead of a driver, watch how many people are on their phones the entire time. Wheel with one hand, phone in the other. It drives me crazy, but it's not changing. Ever see pedestrians? Always bent over a phone, not paying attention to anything else around them. It pisses me off so much, and I'm still working through why it makes me feel that way. Mostly because I think it's stupid, reckless behavior. Get your crap ready ahead of time. Pick your playlist or podcast, hit play, and actually enjoy the scenery we get on this planet while the grass is still green and the sky is still blue. Story 6, mixing cleaning supplies. Cleaners are usually dangerous chemicals. Mixing certain chemicals can create dangerous gases. One of the common cleaner mistakes people make is dish soap and bleach. A lot of dish soaps have ammonia in them, and you don't want to be around the gas that ammonia and chlorine make. Also, don't clean your kitty litters with bleach. Use chlorine-free disinfectants instead. Cat pee naturally has ammonia in it and can cause a reaction too. My husband was cleaning the bathroom one evening and poured bleach in the toilet. He left it there overnight, and I went and peed in the toilet in the morning. All of a sudden, I smelled this strong, bleachy chemical smell and almost immediately got a headache. I flushed the toilet 5, 6 times, turned on the bathroom fan, and got out of there. But I felt crappy all day. Story 7, high blood pressure. My husband was in good shape and died of a heart attack at 31 years old, and high blood pressure was a big factor. He had undiagnosed congenital heart problems as well, but his blood pressure was so high that the examiner, found kidney damage. His brother also was hospitalized with high blood pressure in his early 20s. I'm getting into the healthcare industry, and as a widow with 2 kids, I know my BP can get high from stress. It's always normal when I check, but I'm nervous about it and trying to take steps to make it less likely to be a big problem. Story 8 in Australia. The blue-ringed octopus. I did a biology project about these when I was in elementary school. The reason they're dangerous isn't because people aren't aware that blue-ringed octopus are deadly poisonous. It's because they're not aware they don't always have blue rings. They just show them when they're stressed. So people find little octopus in tide pools and think they must be fine since they don't have any blue rings. If it's the same thing I'm thinking of, the only way to survive, if there's not quick access to a hospital, is by having nonstop CPR given to you until the toxin wears off, which takes hours. One guy was saved this way, but they didn't realize that while he was paralyzed, his eyes were also paralyzed open and staring directly into the blazing sun for all that time. He had his eyes totally sunburned into blindness and experienced it happening the whole time. Story 9. Bites from the wrong flea or mosquito or tick have been decimating mankind since forever. If your tick bite gets a bullseye shape around it, go to the doctor. Possible Lyme disease. If your spider bite gets raised and white, go to the doctor. Possible necrotic lesions from recluse. Don't live in fear of these things and squash everything with crawly legs. Do some research. Tons of bug info online. Free from many universities, tons of insect or spider or etc. subreddits. And be smart. Wear tall socks in long grass and check yourself in pets. My grandfather is one of the men that just seems to know everything, and he's always told me and my family to keep ticks in a Ziploc bag when you get them off of you. Also, make sure to put the date you found the tick on the Ziploc to help medical professionals find out which tick-borne disease you may have. Story 10, balloons, specifically kids. I was watching a video on how a lot of kids die from playing with balloons. Do you know how kids are all dramatic and breathe really hard in and out to blow them up? Sometimes they suck in so hard that they suck the balloon into their throat, lodging it in there. And CPR doesn't work once they stop breathing because you're just inflating and deflating the balloon in the throat, and the air can't pass through. I don't even have kids, but I've been telling everyone not to let their kids play with balloons since I learned this. I forget her name, but she's a mortician who posts on Instagram about common things that can end you that you don't realize. Story 11, accidental acetaminophen, Tylenol, paracetamol, poisoning. You get a bad cold, take some Tylenol and some cough syrup and some decongestant, and don't realize they all have acetaminophen. You take a bit more than the recommended dose of each for a few days, and then your liver dies. Acetaminophen would not be approved under modern drug safety rules, but it is grandfathered in. Story 12, humans are squishy unless they aren't. Somehow we have evolved to either have the durability of a bouncy ball or a glass bauble, and it's a coin flip on whether you bounce or shatter, so fights. People think it's like in the movies, and sure, maybe sometimes things go okay and you work it out and everything's chill, but if you pick a fight in real life, you had better be very ready for the possibility that you could end someone, even especially if you don't mean to. If you shove someone and they fall wrong, they can die. If they hit their head or you hit them in the head wrong. If you hit someone in the nose just right, a bone can pierce the brain, the temple is a very vulnerable spot, etc. They can die. People don't always fight fair in real life. There's every chance they have a knife or keys or rings or even a gun. Or they pick up a shovel and throw it at your head like that video that went viral several years ago. This isn't a "I'm a badass who could totally end someone" thing. It's more a survivor bias thing. On average, yeah, you'll probably be okay. But I'd rather not take the chance personally. Story 13, alcohol. Not only does it cause all the problems you already know about, but less than half of the population are aware that alcohol has been proven to cause cancer. The amount of people who know this, of course, varies depending on the demographic. A few years ago in the UK, this number was actually only around 10%. It's not a group 2B carcinogen, possibly causes cancer, like gasoline or even a group 2. A carcinogen probably causes cancer, like red meat. Alcohol is a group 1 carcinogen, which means it is proven to cause cancer. Story 14, fermentation in confined spaces. Fermentation releases CO2, and in a poorly ventilated room, it can be fatal. I was cleaning my dad's old room with my cousin, and my grandparents turned the room into a wine fermentation room. We cleaned it, sat a bit around, and my grandma came to us. She freaked out, told us it's dangerous, and forced us to go out, and when we took a breath of clean air, we had the worst headache known to mankind. If it wasn't for my grandma, God bless her soul, we would have been dead. Fermentation is badass in every possible way. Don't mess with fermentation. Story 15. Apparently, eating cooked rice that's been left out overnight is the #1 cause of botulism. Knowing that the botulinum bacteria is mostly found in soil, I Googled this, and apparently, rice botulism isn't caused by the same bacteria. Rice botulism is food poisoning caused by Bacillus cereus, which is mild compared to botulism. Story 16. Running a power wire for a car audio amplifier in your door jamb. Every time you open and shut your door, you are pinching the wire between two pieces of metal. Eventually, it wears through the insulation, and if you are lucky, the fuse blows or the battery explodes before your car catches on fire. Wire is supposed to be run through a rubber or plastic grommet in the firewall. At least with this one, you're not seeing a whole lot of aftermarket car audio like you used to. Most cars' stock audio is good enough for most people, and trying to integrate systems in newer cars is fairly expensive and complicated. Also, I was dumb as hell in high school and ran the wire through the door jamb and fender for a little bit. Story 17. Water. Specifically the turbulence section just after a dam, waterfall, or weir. There's a section just after the fall called the boiling point. You can see it as a line where the bubbles flow upstream rather than down. It's called aerated or non-buoyant water. It's caused by the turbulence. It means that crap doesn't float in it, but you'll absolutely still drown in it. It claims the lives of kayakers, animals, and unlucky bastards all the time. I think you can escape it in certain circumstances by swimming under and out. But I think usually it's to try and keep breathing and hope somebody sees you fall. Story 18. Electricity, just be careful. From someone who, in an amazing feat of bad luck, accidentally dropped a screwdriver across the terminals of a rather large and powerful unprotected battery, consequently causing welding said screwdriver to said battery terminal, triggering the whole thing to pressurize and bang, not too long after I'd bolted out the barn. Not a fun day. Lots of not so nice chemical smells that smell oddly like cat piss, and the awkward process of binning it all, not to mention the cost. Story 19. Watering down your infant's formula. Too much water in their system can make them sick, or even die. Follow the directions. Don't save a few bucks by watering down your baby's bottle. Note, if you, like me, accidentally do not add enough milk in one bottle, your baby will be fine. Baby may have a tummy ache and some diarrhea, but they will be fine. If you notice while they are eating, just add in whatever amount of formula you skipped in their bottle and have them finish it. If they drank the bottle and you didn't notice, just add whatever amount of formula you skipped in the next bottle and take steps so you don't do it again. I now just out loud count out how many scoops I am pouring into the bottle and how many ounces of water. Story 20. Untreated minor wounds or bacterial infections in patients with circulatory or pulmonary conditions, such as COPD and heart failure, especially with CVI, chronic venous insufficiency. My dad, age 67, who had COPD, a murmur, and a prolapsed mitral valve, had a relatively minor cut on his left leg, like the kind you'd get if you scraped your leg on something sharp. After a couple of days of putting Neosporin on it, he noticed he had some red streaks on that leg, and it was hot and hurt like heck. So he went to his doctor, who sent him to the ER. The ER diagnosed cellulitis, and despite knowing he was a senior cardiac or pulmonary patient with valvular disease, did not pursue a very aggressive course of antibiotics for the first day for unknown reasons. On the second day, after his cardiologist consulted with the treating physician, they hit him with some strong IV antibiotics, but his leg seemed like it was already healing, so that they told him he'd be good to go in a couple of days. Wasn't running a fever, fully alert. I called him to check on him and asked if he wanted me to come visit him. He told me no. They were going to release him tomorrow morning, and then we could go get lunch. He told me about how he was bored and had run out of Sudoku puzzles to work on, and that he was going to have to reschedule his trip to Arkansas to see his girlfriend in Hot Springs. 3 hours later, I'm at home eating dinner and get a call from the hospital saying I need to get there right now. First, I thought it's a scam, so I hung up twice. Third time, I finally gave in, so I hauled butt to the ER, about 20 meters drive. And by that time, he'd already passed away. He went into sudden, unexplained arrhythmia that very quickly turned into a systole, flatline. The machine said it was apparently not amenable to cardioversion, unshockable, but they tried anyway along with chest compressions for 45 minutes. But it was called and classified as sudden cardiac passing. Story 21, I'm going to go with electrocution because it can happen instantly. And if you aren't a handy person and not aware of basic home improvement do's and don'ts, you can just plug in a phone charger unbeknownst the outlet is bad, and boom, you're literally toasted for good. You never really hear about accidental electrocutions. Basically, those kinds of stories aren't newsworthy unless they are literally struck by a lightning bolt. I think it happens more often than discussed. Story 22, carbon dioxide poisoning, specifically in walk-in coolers for bars. CO2 lines for kegs can leak and fill the room with CO2. It forms a heavy layer near the floor, so what happens is you walk in the cooler, everything seems fine, then you bend down, catch a big lungful, and pass out almost instantly, then asphyxiate. What's awful, though, is what happens next. In a very large number of cases, the person who discovers them runs up and kneels down to see if their coworker is okay. Then they catch a big lungful of CO2 and pass out as well. The lesson here is, if you open a door to an enclosed space and there's a dead person in it, be careful. Also, CO2 alarms are cheap and easy to install, and your boss probably isn't aware of the danger posed, or they'd have installed one for you already. Story 23, sleep apnea. A lot of people have it in varying degrees, but either don't know it, ignore it, or can't afford to treat it. People do not realize the damage it does, and most don't realize you can die directly from it as a result of medical issues caused by it, or get into accidents on the road or at work from the fatigue it causes. It doesn't just affect overweight people. CPAP machines can be $700+ without insurance, plus replacing and maintaining the equipment needed to operate one. You can't even buy one without a prescription. It can cause heart issues, high blood pressure, and diabetes, in addition to the other negative effects. Story 24, water. So many people try to drive across what they think is shallow water during a flood, and it sweeps their car away and they drown. This is flood season in Texas, where I live. And every single time, there's at least a couple of fatalities from people who thought they could power through just a little bit of water. Nope. I remember last year there was a flash flood when I was driving home and got stuck in traffic. I was driving a tiny Kia Forte that was about 3 inches off the ground. There was a ditch that had turned into a raging river on my right, and to my left, the person's yard had turned into a lake. The river to my right and the lake to my left merged into one, and my car started floating. It was the most terrifying thing I've ever experienced. Luckily, there was nowhere for my car to go, and I made it home safely. But the term flash flood is no joke. It happens so fast. Story 25, dust is explosive. Dust explosions are the result of high concentrations of combustible dust particles rapidly combusting inside an enclosed space. When mixed with oxygen, these fine particles can be ignited when coming into contact with a spark, metal ember, cigarette butt, or other ignition source. This quick combustion process is known as deflagration and results in a high-pressure air wave. As the air wave explodes out of its enclosed space, it will likely dislodge or stir up combustible dust elsewhere in the facility. This will mix the dust with the oxygen, which will make the explosion bigger and potentially fuel a second dust explosion, or even several. Some of these may occur inside other machines or containers, as the pressure wave and the fire propagate through the duct system. At this point, the risk of harm to human life and of destruction of equipment or even entire buildings is overwhelming. Story 26. I've worked a few blue-collar warehouse or construction-type jobs, and the physical conditions people find acceptable appalling. Working in super dusty environments, spending hours in rooms full of sawdust, dealing with pungent chemicals nonstop all day. I'm pretty sure these people are taking 20 years off their lifespan by doing this. And many of them keep the standard low because they think expecting safer conditions or proper safety gear isn't manly. Story 27, unstable furniture, especially when it comes to kids and cats. IKEA got it right with the cheap wall connectors that are easy to install, if you know how to use basic tools. My mom's work friend lost her toddler in the late 90s, early 2000s, when TVs were still gigantic boxes of machinery. It was sitting on a low table, but the carpet at the time was new and still very fluffy, so that caused the table to slant. The heavy TV slid off the table, and she was lying on the floor, so it crushed her head. Police came and said it happened a lot more than people think. Secure your furniture, folks, especially around kids and pets. It's a huge part of baby or toddler proofing. Story 28, swallowing stuff. It doesn't matter how old you are or how well you've chewed it. Anything is dangerous if you swallow it wrong enough. especially things you were never supposed to swallow. One time a few years ago, I was taking apart a Lego build, but I got lazy and used my teeth. Thank God it went down the stomach side, but still, even despite a great popsicle, a free viewing of Shrek, and throwing it up before an x ray, and going home in an oversized hospital gown, it was horrifying. Don't eat Legos, kids. Story 29, renal failure. Your kidneys are more important than you think, and when they stop functioning correctly, you can get lots of symptoms that are overlooked, like being short of breath, confusion, weakness. People just write it off as being tired or that they need to eat something. People who drink a lot of soda can cause harm to their kidneys and not even know it. If your kidneys get too bad, you have to get on dialysis. And then from there, it's just a countdown until they stop completely. Story 30, button batteries. They burn a hole in your esophagus or trachea if you inhale it. It is very common for kids to ingest them. If your kid does swallow one, or you suspect they have, go to the emergency department immediately. Feed your kid honey on the way there, as it can coat the battery and stop it from burning a hole. Unless your kid is under 2, then they should not have honey. Your kid will need it to be removed immediately. However, if it makes it to the stomach, you do have more time, as the acid in the stomach can help neutralize the battery. The real danger is if it gets stuck in the esophagus or inhaled. I have seen holes the size of a quarter at the carina, junction of your 2 main bronchi in your lungs, holes in the esophagus that got all the way to the aorta, and kids with permanent G-tubes and esophageal strictures from button batteries. Hide your button batteries.